as the sun set over Babylon, casting long shadows across the glistening walls and intricate palaces. The city's intellectual heartbeat began to stir in quiet, almost imperceptible ways. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, while renowned for its towering architecture and bustling markets, held another treasure that often escapes the casual observer: its pursuit of knowledge, particularly in astronomy and mathematics. Picture scholars seated in dimly lit chambers, clay tablets spread before them, styluses poised as they chart the movements of planets, record eclipses, and calculate the precise lengths of months and seasons. Some researchers believe that these observations were not only practical for agricultural and ceremonial purposes, but also a means to understand the cosmos itself, to impose order on the vast, mysterious sky that stretched endlessly above the Euphrates. The Babylonians developed mathematical techniques that were surprisingly sophisticated, using basic decalculations to solve complex geometric problems, a system that would later influence Greek and Islamic scholars who built upon these foundations. Their records show meticulous attention to detail, the timing of lunar and solar events, predictions of eclipses, and the motion of Jupiter and Venus, all carefully documented with a precision that seems almost modern in its rigor. Persian authorities, recognizing the value of this knowledge, maintained these scholarly institutions, ensuring that cuneiform archives continued to be updated and preserved, and that scribal schools trained new generations to read, interpret, and expand upon these records. The intellectual achievements of Neo-Babylonian astronomers also had a ripple effect on wider Mesopotamian and later civilizations, contributing to calendar systems, timekeeping, and navigation that would influence Greek, Islamic, and even medieval European practices. Yet there is a deeper, almost philosophical aspect to this pursuit. The Babylonians' desire to map the heavens, to find patterns in chaos, reflects a universal human curiosity, an urge to glimpse order where it seems impossible to measure the unmeasurable. While some tablets focus purely on observation, others hint at speculation, connections between celestial events and terrestrial happenings, suggesting that Babylonian thought straddled the line between science and early astrology. As we leave the quiet chambers of scholars and step back into the lively streets of Babylon, one can almost hear the echoes of their work reverberating through time. From these observations of the stars, we now turn to another enduring legacy of Neo-Babylonian ingenuity, the empire's architectural and engineering marvels, which transformed the very landscape of Mesopotamia and left an imprint on civilizations for centuries to come. Step with me now into the bustling streets and towering walls of Neo-Babylonian Babylon, where the empire's architectural vision comes alive in a symphony of stone, brick, and color. Imagine the massive Ishtar Gate rising before you, its deep azure glazed bricks shimmering in the harsh sun, adorned with rows of golden dragons and lions that seem to move with a life of their own, guardians of a city that prided itself on both power and artistry. Some historians suggest that the construction of such monumental works was as much about psychological dominance as it was about aesthetics, a way to inspire awe in subjects and visitors alike, to remind them of the empire's reach and ingenuity. The urban landscape of Babylon was carefully planned, streets laid out in precise grids, districts divided to separate residential, commercial, and ceremonial spaces, while massive canals and aqueducts wove through the city, carrying life-giving watered gardens, temples, and farmlands. The Neo-Babylonians perfected hydraulic engineering, creating intricate irrigation networks that could sustain large populations in a region often parched by summer heat, allowing for abundant harvests and a thriving economy. Glazed brick decoration, perfected under Nebuchadnezzar II, was not limited to gates and walls but extended to palace facades, temples, and even private homes of the elite, reflecting a culture that valued beauty and symbolism in equal measure. Every building, every public space carried messages of power, piety, and prestige, a visual language that communicated the empire's ideals without uttering a single word. Some scholars speculate that the integration of defensive, ceremonial, and commercial functions into unified urban designs also served practical purposes, creating cities that were simultaneously secure, efficient, and aesthetically compelling, capable of accommodating complex social hierarchies while impressing all who entered. Yet there was a softer, almost human side to this urban ingenuity. The careful zoning allowed for marketplaces to flourish, community spaces to support gatherings, and temples to maintain spiritual life, reflecting a civilization attentive not only to empire building, but to daily life. The architectural legacy of Neo-Babylonian Babylon did not end with the empire's fall. Persian and later Hellenistic rulers drew upon these innovations, adopting urban layouts, construction techniques, and decorative styles, leaving a cultural footprint that extended far beyond the city's walls. As we leave the echoing grandeur of Babylon's streets and walls, with the distant sound of flowing canals and the faint shimmer of glazed tiles in our mind's eye, we move next to a quieter, more intimate but equally transformative sphere of Neo-Babylonian influence, the empire's legal and administrative systems, which would quietly shape governance, commerce, and daily life across centuries and empires to come. Now, let us turn our attention from the monumental stones of Babylon to the meticulous records and invisible architecture of the Neo-Babylonian mind, the administrative and legal innovations that quietly structured an empire, holding together a diverse population across vast, often harsh landscapes. Picture the bustling scribe schools, the faint smell of clay and ink filling the air, as young scribes etched cuneiform symbols into wet tablets, learning the exacting techniques that would allow them to record every transaction, decree, and legal judgment with unerring precision. Some researchers suggest that these archives were the backbone of imperial control, enabling distant provinces to function smoothly under the distant gaze of the king. Imagine the vastness of these archives, shelves upon shelves of clay tablets, each one capturing details of trade, tax collection, property rights, legal disputes, and astronomical observations. A monumental record of human organization that would influence civilizations long after Babylon itself fell. The Persian conquerors, far from discarding this inherited knowledge, embraced it, recognizing that centuries of accumulated Mesopotamian administrative expertise offered tools far more sophisticated than anything they could improvise. Adapting Neo-Babylonian legal precedents and bureaucratic structures into their sprawling empire, Babylonian jurists had codified complex legal systems capable of mediating disputes, regulating commerce, and preserving social order, often tailored to specific local customs, yet guided by overarching principles of fairness and predictability. Some scholars argue that these hybrid legal systems, blending local traditions with imperial oversight, were key to maintaining peace and economic prosperity across regions as diverse as the Indus Valley to the shores of the Aegean. Commercial innovations were equally remarkable. The banking houses of Babylon pioneered credit systems, international trade agreements, and partnership structures that allowed merchants to operate across vast distances, transferring wealth and goods with a reliability that would seem astonishing even by modern standards. Meanwhile, astronomers and mathematicians worked alongside scribes, recording planetary movements, predicting eclipses, and refining calendars. Their observations preserved in the same archives that documented legal codes and tax records. These intellectual achievements were not merely academic. They shaped practical life, from planting cycles to festival timings, and would ripple outward, influencing Greek, Islamic, and medieval European scholars centuries later. As we leave the quiet, dust-laden chambers of Babylon's archives, the echo of stylus on clay still lingering in our imagination, we move next to the vibrant economic life of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, exploring the markets, merchants, and financial networks that made Babylon not just a city of grandeur, but a hub of commerce and innovation that resonated far beyond its walls. Next, we move from the quiet chambers of archives to the bustling streets, markets, and canals that brought the Neo-Babylonian Empire to life. A world where commerce, craft, and culture intertwined beneath the shadow of monumental walls and towering ziggurats. Picture the clamor of traders in Babylon's grand bazaars, their voices rising over the gentle lapping of the Euphrates, the scent of spices and baked bread mingling with the earthy aroma of mud brick streets, as merchants haggled over silver, textiles, and grain. Some researchers believe that the sophistication of Neo-Babylonian commercial law, developed centuries earlier, allowed these transactions to occur with remarkable reliability, as contracts and debts were meticulously recorded on clay tablets, each symbol a promise enforced by both tradition and state authority. Banking houses thrived, acting as both storage for wealth and centers for complex financial operations, loans, credit arrangements, international trade partnerships stretching across deserts and rivers, connecting distant lands with Babylon as the beating heart. Imagine a merchant preparing for a voyage to the Persian Gulf, consulting the stars to choose an auspicious departure, calculating profits, risks, and exchange rates, all within a framework of legal and administrative knowledge that had evolved over generations. These innovations not only facilitated commerce, but created networks of trust and cooperation that bound the empire together, ensuring that economic activity flowed even in times of political uncertainty. Beyond the marketplaces, the city itself reflected the same precision and vision. Canals and aqueducts carried water across the city, irrigating fields, supplying homes, and enabling craft workshops to flourish. Hydraulic engineering, perfected over centuries, supported both agriculture and urban life, demonstrating the interplay between science and practical necessity. Some archaeologists suggest that the organized layout of streets, residential zones, and commercial districts was designed not only for convenience, but for security, trade, efficiency, and civic pride, creating a model of urban planning that influenced later Persian and even Hellenistic cities. As you imagine the glint of sunlight on glazed bricks, the vibrant blue of the Ishtar Gate, and the rhythmic footsteps along processional ways, it becomes clear that Babylon was more than a seat of power. It was an ecosystem of human ingenuity, commerce, and culture. Yet, beneath this organized grandeur, The empire faced its challenges, shifting allegiances, regional tensions, and the ever-present threat of conquest. From the heart of Babylon's economic vitality, we now turn our gaze to the intellectual and scientific achievements of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, exploring the scholars, astronomers, and mathematicians whose insights would echo across centuries and continents, leaving a legacy that transcended walls, markets, and even empires themselves. From the bustling markets and engineered canals of Babylon, we now drift into the quieter, more contemplative spaces where Neo-Babylonian scholars peered into the heavens and wrestled with the mysteries of numbers, time, and the cosmos, a world where curiosity met meticulous observation, and where clay tablets became vessels of enduring knowledge. Picture the soft scratching of reed styluses on wet clay in dimly lit scribal chambers, the scent of dust and baked earth mingling with the faint aroma of oil lamps. As scholars recorded the movements of planets, the timing of eclipses, and the intricacies of lunar and solar cycles, some researchers suggest that Babylonian astronomers were among the most precise observers of the ancient world, using systematic records that spanned decades, even centuries, to predict celestial events with uncanny accuracy. Their methods were grounded not only in observation but in mathematical innovation, employing sophisticated techniques for handling fractions, ratios, and geometric relationships that allowed them to calculate planetary paths, the length of months, and the timing of festivals with remarkable consistency. The work of these scholars did not exist in isolation. It intersected with the empire's religious and administrative needs, as accurate calendars were crucial for ritual, agricultural planning, and coordination of civic life. Imagine a priest-astronomer consulting a series of tablets before advising the king on an auspicious date for a festival or military campaign, where the alignment of stars could carry both spiritual and practical significance. The influence of this intellectual tradition extended far beyond the city's walls. Centuries later, Greek thinkers would incorporate Babylonian observations into their own astronomical systems, and Islamic scholars would translate and expand upon these texts, preserving and amplifying the Neo-Babylonian legacy. Yet these achievements were more than technical. They reflected a mindset of meticulous recording, long-term planning, and a desire to understand patterns that governed the natural world, a testament to human curiosity reaching toward the infinite, while the scribes and scholars labored in quiet. The empire itself continued to pulse with life-fit streets, palaces and temples bustling, its markets thriving, its walls echoing the rhythm of civilization. The intellectual achievements of Neo-Babylonian society remind us that even in an empire renowned for its monumental architecture and military might, the pursuit of knowledge, the careful observation of the world, and the recording of ideas could leave a legacy that outlasted dynasties and shaped the course of human history. As we leave the chambers of study and observation, we turn next to the legal and administrative genius of Neo-Babylonian civilization, a system of order and codified rules that governed life across a diverse and expansive empire, revealing a civilization built as much on law and structure as on culture and knowledge. Next, we move from the quiet halls of study to the structured, the bustling world of Neo-Babylonian administration, where law, bureaucracy, and governance intertwined to create an empire that could manage vast territories with remarkable efficiency. A place where clay tablets and cuneiform inscriptions were as vital as walls and gates, silently enforcing order and maintaining the delicate balance between ruler and subject. Picture the administrative centers, rooms filled with scribes hunched over tables, reed styluses scratching precise marks into wet clay, the air thick with the combined smells of dust, ink, and incense, as officials compiled records of taxes, trade, labor, and tribute, creating a meticulous paper trail that allowed kings to exert authority across lands stretching from the banks of the Tigris to distant, desert-bound settlements. Some researchers believe that this sophisticated bureaucracy owed its roots to centuries of earlier Mesopotamian innovation, refined under Neo-Babylonian rule to manage diverse populations, complex trade networks, and agricultural production on a massive scale, legal codes derived from traditions codified in previous eras, guided judgments on property disputes, contracts, and commercial agreements, forming a framework that could reconcile the interests of kings, merchants, and citizens alike. Imagine a merchant navigating the intricate web of laws to ensure his grain shipment reached its destination without dispute, or a farmer relying on precise administrative records to prove ownership of irrigated land. The cuneiform tablets acting as both shield and sword in a society governed by written authority. The influence of Neo-Babylonian legal principles extended far beyond Babylon's city walls. Persian rulers would later adopt and adapt these precedents, weaving them into a broader imperial framework that required both flexibility and consistency to govern peoples of many languages, religions, and customs. Commercial practices, particularly those developed by Babylonian banking houses, further illustrate the empire's ingenuity. Merchants could engage in credit agreements, long-distance trade, and investment partnerships with confidence, guided by laws and contracts that reflected centuries of practical experience. This fusion of law, administration, and commerce created a civilization that was ordered yet adaptable, capable of sustaining growth, trade, and social cohesion across an empire marked by diversity and mobility. And yet, even as we marvel at the precision of administration and law, one must wonder how these structures influenced the daily lives of ordinary citizens. What did it feel like to live under such meticulous order, to witness the empire's bureaucratic machinery in motion, and to participate in a system that would leave a legacy influencing future civilizations long after Neo-Babylonian kings had vanished? From here, we drift next into the architectural and engineering marvels of Neo-Babylon, where physical space, design, and utility converged to create cities of awe-inspiring scale and enduring beauty. Now, let us step into the monumental streets and structures of Neo-Babylon, a city that rose from the flat Mesopotamian plains like a jewel of mud brick and glazed stone, where every wall, gate, and palace carried both practical function and symbolic meaning, whispering stories of power, devotion, and artistic mastery to those who wandered its avenues. Picture the Ishtar Gate, its brilliant blue-glazed bricks shimmering under the harsh Mesopotamian sun, adorned with rows of golden lions, dragons, and bulls, each relief carved with precision and care, evoking both reverence and awe, a threshold between the mundane streets and the sacred precincts beyond. Some historians suggest that these architectural marvels were not merely expressions of wealth and authority, but were designed to impress and psychologically dominate both citizens and visitors. A city that communicated the might and order of the empire even to those who had never entered a palace chamber. The processional way, a broad avenue stretching for hundreds of meters, flanked by walls decorated with intricate reliefs, echoed with the footsteps of priests, soldiers, and courtiers during ceremonial processions. each movement carefully choreographed to reinforce the king's divine mandate and the empire's harmonious structure. Beyond the ceremonial grandeur, the city's hydraulic engineering revealed a civilization attuned to both utility and survival. Canals, aqueducts, and reservoirs channeled the life-giving waters of the Euphrates and Tigris to irrigate fields, sustain livestock, and fill urban baths, demonstrating knowledge of fluid dynamics and water management that would influence later civilizations for centuries. Neo-Babylonian architects also experimented with urban planning on a grand scale, zoning residential, commercial, and religious districts, ensuring that markets thrived, neighborhoods functioned efficiently, and sacred spaces maintained their sanctity, creating a sense of order and rhythm that balanced daily life with imperial spectacle. Glazed bricks and ornamental reliefs were not limited to monumental gates. Private homes, temples, and administrative buildings were adorned with decorative tiles, showcasing artistry that merged aesthetic beauty with durable construction, leaving an impression of sophistication and permanence. Some scholars believe that these urban designs influenced later Persian and Hellenistic cities, establishing models of city planning that would ripple through the ancient world. Yet, even amid such order and splendor, questions linger. How did ordinary Babylonians navigate the intersection of ritual, commerce, and governance in their daily routines? How did the grandeur of palaces and gates affect the psyche of those who lived in shadowed alleyways nearby? From the brilliance of Neo-Babylonian architecture, our journey now turns to the intellectual pulse of the empire, where astronomy, mathematics, and scholarship illuminated the human mind and charted the cosmos with extraordinary precision. From the sun-drenched streets and monumental gates of Neo-Babylon, we now drift into the quieter, yet no less profound, chambers of knowledge where scholars and scribes dedicated themselves to understanding the heavens, the earth, and the intricate laws that governed both. Imagine the dim glow of oil lamps flickering across clay tablets, the sharp scratch of a stylus tracing cuneiform symbols into wet clay, each mark carrying complex calculations, astronomical observations, or legal codes, a bridge between thought and permanence that would survive millennia. Neo-Babylonian astronomers observed the slow, predictable dance of planets and stars, noting eclipses, the rising and setting of celestial bodies, and the subtle shifts that occurred over years and decades, producing predictive calendars that not only regulated religious festivals but also informed agricultural cycles and civic planning. Some researchers suggest that these astronomical records, carefully maintained in temple archives, represented a blend of empirical observation and spiritual interpretation, where understanding the cosmos was both a practical and a divine endeavor. Mathematics was inseparable from these observations. As Babylonian scholars developed sophisticated techniques for solving geometric problems, dividing circles, and calculating areas, applying these methods to everything from land measurement to construction projects, creating a quantitative framework that would ripple through Greek, Islamic, and European traditions centuries later. But the Neo-Babylonians' intellectual pursuits were not limited to the heavens. Medical texts reveal detailed knowledge of anatomy, herbal remedies, and diagnostic procedures, blending practical experience with ritual prescriptions, and suggesting a culture deeply concerned with the preservation of life and the management of disease. Legal scholars, meanwhile, codified precedents that regulated commerce, marriage, property, and punishment, refining the casuistic method inherited from earlier Mesopotamian civilizations. which used specific cases to establish general principles, a method later echoed in rabbinic legal traditions. In the quiet of temple libraries and administrative offices, knowledge was curated, debated, and taught, as scribal schools ensured that new generations of administrators and priests could read, interpret, and expand upon the accumulated wisdom of centuries. Some theorists argue that the meticulous preservation of these texts under Persian oversight was more than administrative pragmatism. It represented a conscious acknowledgement of the power of recorded knowledge, a recognition that the survival of an empire depended as much on intellectual inheritance as military might. Yet, for all this meticulous study, mysteries remained. How did Neo-Babylonian scholars perceive the universe beyond observation? Did they glimpse truths now lost, insights buried beneath layers of clay and sand? From these illuminated tablets, we move next to the interplay between commerce and culture, where the flow of goods and ideas shaped the very fabric of Neo-Babylonian society and left legacies that endured far beyond its walls. Next we move from the silent scribal halls into the bustling streets and marketplaces of Neo-Babylon, where commerce was not merely a matter of trade, but a vital artery that sustained the empire and connected it to the wider world. Picture long, sun-baked avenues lined with merchants from distant lands, their goods stacked in wooden crates, woven baskets, and jars sealed with clay stamps. The scent of spices mingling with the dry dust of the streets, the clatter of pottery, the faint murmur of foreign tongues blending into a living tapestry of human enterprise. The Neo-Babylonian economy was astonishingly complex, relying on agricultural surpluses, riverine trade along the Euphrates, and sophisticated financial instruments developed by banking houses that issued loans, facilitated international money transfers, and managed investment partnerships. Some historians suggest that the innovations in commercial law codified during this period were so advanced that they provided the conceptual foundations for economic practices in the ancient Mediterranean and even influenced later financial systems across the Near East. Persian officials, inheriting these systems, recognized their utility and expanded them to govern a vast and culturally diverse empire, demonstrating a rare synthesis of administrative continuity and innovation. Markets were not just economic hubs. They were also centers of information exchange, where news traveled as quickly as goods, and where scribes often maintained detailed records of transactions, agreements, and disputes, preserving an astonishing level of detail about everyday life. Traders dealt in grain, dates, textiles, and crafted goods, while also transporting precious metals, exotic stones, and rare artifacts from distant lands, creating a cosmopolitan environment that blurred cultural boundaries and encouraged the spread of ideas alongside commerce. The Murasu archive, for example, reveals networks of merchants managing contracts across cities, villages, and even foreign territories, highlighting both the scope of Neo-Babylonian trade and the sophistication of record-keeping that made it possible. Some scholars suggest that these commercial networks not only fueled economic growth but also facilitated the diffusion of knowledge, artistic styles, and technological innovations, embedding Neo-Babylonian influence far beyond its political borders. Yet, even amidst this bustling prosperity, challenges persisted: disputes over contracts, fluctuating harvests, and political unrest threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of urban and rural economies. From the intricate ledgers of merchants and the rhythmic clamor of marketplaces, We now turn our attention to the architectural marvels of Neo-Babylon, where stone and brick, water and fire were transformed into monuments that echoed both human ingenuity and the empire's enduring desire to impress, intimidate, and inspire. From the vibrant chaos of Neo-Babylonian marketplaces, we now shift our gaze upward, to the soaring walls, majestic gates, and intricate palaces that defined the empire's urban grandeur. Imagine walking beneath the towering Ishtar Gate, its brilliant blue glazed bricks shimmering in the sunlight, reliefs of dragons and lions frozen in eternal procession, the scent of baked clay mingling with the faint tank of incense from nearby temples, the soft echo of footsteps on wide stone avenues, creating a rhythm that feels both ceremonial and foreboding. This was not merely decoration. It was a statement of power, a physical manifestation of a civilization asserting its dominance and divine favor. Some researchers suggest that the architectural innovations of the Neo-Babylonian period, including the precise use of glazed bricks, advanced hydraulic engineering, and monumental urban planning, set precedents that resonated across the Persian Empire and even influenced Hellenistic and later Islamic urban design. Palaces were labyrinthine, with vast courtyards, hidden chambers, and grand halls designed for both governance and ceremony, while the careful alignment of streets, residential districts, and marketplaces reflected a systematic understanding of urban organization that balanced functionality with visual splendor. Hydraulic innovations were particularly remarkable. Canals, reservoirs, and aqueducts channeled the waters of the Euphrates to nourish gardens, sustain crops, and provide clean drinking water, creating a sense of controlled abundance in an otherwise arid landscape. Some scholars argue that the sophistication of Neo-Babylonian engineering made large-scale agriculture and urban life possible, supporting dense populations and creating the material foundation for the empire's cultural and intellectual achievements. Defensive structures were equally impressive. Massive walls encircled the city, with strategic gates that regulated movement, and watchtowers that offered panoramic views of the surrounding plains, providing both security and psychological dominance over those who approached. Ceremonial spaces, such as the processional way, linked temples and palaces, creating a continuous stage upon which rulers could display their wealth, piety, and authority, while also reinforcing social hierarchies and the ideological framework of kingship. Within these walls, art and science flourished alongside politics. Astronomers observed the skies from rooftops. Scribes recorded laws and economic transactions, and artisans applied pigments, clay, and metal to create objects of enduring beauty. The city itself became a living symbol of Neo-Babylonian ingenuity and ambition, a place where human creativity and imperial authority intertwined. Yet behind the grandeur, questions linger. How did these achievements arise so quickly? And why, despite such sophistication, did the empire ultimately succumb to external forces? From these monumental streets and gates, we now turn our attention to the minds that peered beyond the walls, to the scholars and astronomers who transformed observation into knowledge that would echo across centuries. Next, we turn from the grandeur of Babylon's walls to the quiet, meticulous work of its scholars and scribes, whose minds charted the heavens and mapped the invisible forces that governed both the cosmos and human life. Imagine sitting in a dimly lit chamber, the scent of clay tablets and ink filling the air, while the soft scratching of reed styluses on wet clay creates a rhythm almost hypnotic. The faint smell of burning oil lamps mingling with dust, and outside, the sounds of the city footsteps, the clatter of carts, the distant murmur of the Euphrates fade into the background. Here, astronomers observed planetary movements with astonishing precision, recording positions of stars, predicting eclipses, and crafting calendars that synchronized agriculture, religious rituals, and civic life. Their methods were mathematical, yet also intuitive, blending careful observation with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Some researchers suggest that Neo-Babylonian astronomers developed techniques for calculating the complex motions of planets that would later inform Greek, Islamic, and even medieval European scientific thought. Beyond the stars, mathematicians wrestled with problems of geometry and arithmetic, constructing numerical frameworks that allowed them to calculate areas, volumes, and proportions necessary for building monumental architecture, dividing land for taxation, and facilitating trade across vast distances. These mathematical tools were not abstract exercises. They were deeply practical, embedded into the administrative, commercial, and religious life of the empire. Scribes preserved legal codes, commercial contracts, and astronomical observations alike, maintaining an unbroken chain of knowledge that Persian administrators would later rely upon when overseeing their sprawling empire. The cuneiform archives stored in Babylon were living repositories, constantly updated and referenced, a silent testament to the civilization's intellectual rigor. Some scholars believe that the cumulative effect of these records created an early form of institutional memory, a way for complex societies to survive the rise and fall of dynasties without losing critical information. The intellectual culture extended beyond practicality into philosophy, divination, and theology. Scholars debated omens, interpreted dreams, and pondered the nature of fate and the divine, blending observation with speculation in ways that infused daily life with wonder and anxiety. In this intersection of science, administration, and spirituality, the Neo-Babylonian Empire demonstrates an enduring truth. Knowledge was power, and the ability to record, interpret, and apply it could shape destinies, both human and celestial. Yet even with such insight, questions remained. How much did these scholars influence the rulers? And to what extent did their observations shape the empire's decisions in war, governance, and trade? From these silent chambers of learning, we now move outward, to the bustling marketplaces where commerce, culture, and human ambition collided in a cacophony of sound, color, and possibility. From the quiet precision of Babylonian scholars, we step into the bustling heart of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, its marketplaces, streets, and commercial hubs, where the pulse of daily life thrummed with energy and possibility. Picture, if you will, the sensory overload of Babylon's streets at midday, merchants calling out their wares in a mosaic of languages, the scent of spices, incense, and baked bread mingling in the air, the clatter of ceramic jars and wooden carts echoing against mud-brick walls, and the gleam of copper and silver coins catching the harsh Mesopotamian sun. Trade was the lifeblood of the empire, linking farmers, artisans, and merchants in a delicate web of exchange that stretched from the fertile banks of the Euphrates to distant lands beyond the empire's reach. Neo-Babylonian banking houses were sophisticated enterprises, their ledgers meticulously recording loans, investments, and partnerships that enabled trade over vast distances and political boundaries. Some researchers suggest that these financial innovations, credit instruments, contractual partnerships, and standardized measures laid the groundwork for economic systems that would influence later empires across the ancient world. Commercial law, derived from earlier Babylonian codes, regulated transactions with precision, resolving disputes and ensuring the flow of goods, while scribes ensured every contract, loan, and sale was recorded in cuneiform. Walk past a merchant negotiating the price of fine wool or exotic oils, and you might overhear the subtle negotiation tactics, the references to past agreements, the invocation of legal precedents that would protect both buyer and seller. Beyond economics, the marketplaces were spaces of cultural exchange, where diverse populations, Chaldeans, Arameans, and visiting traders, shared stories and transmitted knowledge. It was here, amid the cacophony, that the empire's social fabric was woven, blending customs, languages, and traditions into a shared urban life. The architecture of these commercial districts reflected careful planning, streets aligned for efficiency, storage facilities designed to protect goods from sun and flood, and canals threading through the city to facilitate transport. Yet despite this vibrancy, there was an undercurrent of tension, theft, fraud, and political intrigue threaded through the commerce, reminding us that even in prosperity, risk and uncertainty shadowed daily life. As day faded and the marketplace emptied, the echo of transactions lingered like a whispered memory of empire. And as night fell over Babylon, with its lantern-lit streets and the distant toll of temple bells, one cannot help but wonder, how did the rhythms of commerce shape the ambitions of kings, the lives of ordinary citizens, and the very destiny of the Neo-Babylonian Empire? Next, we move from the streets to the walls, the monumental architecture that defined not just the city's skyline, but its enduring legacy. Now, let us ascend from the bustling streets of Babylon to the monumental structures that declared the empire's power, artistry, and ambition, where every brick, every glaze, and every carving told a story that endured far beyond the reign of kings. Imagine standing before the Ishtar Gate, its towering walls rising like a protective leviathan from the ground, adorned with alternating rows of roaring lions, striding dragons, and sacred bulls, each figure meticulously glazed in vibrant blues, golds, and ochres that shimmered under the sun, evoking awe and divine presence. Some scholars suggest that the gate was not merely a defensive structure, but a ritualized threshold, a portal connecting the mortal world to the divine, its processional way hosting ceremonies that blurred the line between human and godly domains. Behind these walls stretched grand palaces, courtyards, and temples, their mud brick foundations massive, their walls reinforced with intricate hydraulic systems that ensured stability and resilience against the floods that could sweep across the Euphrates. The architects and engineers of the Neo-Babylonian period displayed remarkable ingenuity. Canals channeled water for irrigation and decoration. Vaulted chambers provided cool retreats from the sun, and advanced drainage systems preserved the city from decay. Decorative glazed bricks, painstakingly crafted by skilled artisans, adorned walls, gates, and towers, each motif carrying symbolic meaning, reflecting celestial beliefs, imperial power, and divine protection. Some researchers speculate that the aesthetic choices were also a deliberate projection of political authority, a visual language designed to communicate the king's legitimacy and the empire's enduring strength to subjects and visitors alike. Within these walls, the royal palaces housed administrative offices, treasuries, and ceremonial halls, where scribes and officials managed the vast bureaucracy that sustained the empire. Legal documents, trade records, and diplomatic correspondences flowed through these halls, while the king's decrees shaped the lives of citizens across the empire. Nightfall cast shadows along the ramparts, and torches flickered in the courtyards, creating a labyrinth of light and darkness that must have felt almost otherworldly to anyone walking these corridors. The scale, sophistication, and artistry of Neo-Babylonian architecture left an indelible mark, influencing Persian constructions and later Hellenistic cities, seeding ideas of urban grandeur and ceremonial design that reverberated for centuries. And yet, as impressive as these structures were, they existed in a delicate balance with the forces of time, nature, and human ambition. How did such monumental achievements endure the pressures of conquest, decay, and cultural change? Next, we delve into the intellectual heartbeat of the empire, the scribes, scholars and astronomers whose work would echo across millennia. As we leave the monumental gates and palaces behind, we now turn our attention to the quiet, meticulous world of the Neo-Babylonian scribes, the keepers of knowledge who worked tirelessly in dimly lit rooms filled with the scent of clay and ink. Picture long tables strewn with clay tablets, their surfaces etched with countless cuneiform symbols, each mark a testament to centuries of accumulated wisdom, commerce, law, and celestial observation. Some researchers believe that these scribes were more than mere record keepers. They were the intellectual backbone of an empire, bridging the past and future by preserving traditions and innovations alike. Others suggest that their work was almost ritualistic, a disciplined practice that connected them to the divine order, for many believed that writing was a sacred act, a channel through which the gods communicated the principles governing society and the cosmos. In these scribal schools, young apprentices learned the complex cuneiform script, mastering thousands of signs and developing techniques for precise calculation, record keeping, and legal documentation. Here, mathematics and astronomy intertwined seamlessly, as scribes calculated celestial movements, predicted lunar and solar eclipses, and refined the calendars that governed agricultural cycles, religious festivals, and civic duties. The observations recorded on these tablets were astonishingly accurate, and their influence would ripple through Greek, Islamic, and medieval European scholarship, seeding knowledge that survived long after the clay had hardened and empires had fallen. Beyond celestial patterns, scribes meticulously documented the minutiae of daily life, trade transactions, property ownership, taxation, and legal disputes, creating archives that allowed for the smooth administration of one of the largest and most diverse empires of the ancient Near East. Some tablets reveal the complexity of Babylonian banking systems, contracts, and partnership arrangements, illustrating the sophisticated economic machinery that supported long-distance trade and international commerce. Each tablet carried with it a weight of authority and permanence, intended to endure through the ages, and in doing so, these scribes preserved not only practical knowledge, but also cultural identity, religious traditions, and philosophical inquiry. As you imagine the rhythmic scratching of styluses across clay, the hushed murmurs of instruction, and the faint aroma of baked earth, you realize that these silent rooms were incubators of civilization, quietly shaping the intellectual foundation upon which countless societies would later build. And yet, one wonders, how did this vast network of written knowledge survive the conquests, upheavals, and centuries that followed? Next, we explore the intricate legal and commercial systems of Neo-Babylon, the invisible architecture of society that sustained an empire and influenced generations far beyond its fall. From the quiet chambers of scribes, we now move to the bustling, meticulous world of Neo-Babylonian law and commerce, where the pulse of the empire beat not through swords or walls, but through contracts, decrees, and financial agreements carefully recorded on clay tablets. Imagine crowded marketplaces filled with merchants weighing silver, exchanging goods from distant lands while nearby. Officials in robes of office consulted rows of cuneiform records, ensuring that every transaction followed the intricate legal frameworks established over centuries. Some researchers suggest that the Neo-Babylonian legal system was a living, adaptive organism, absorbing the customs of conquered peoples while maintaining the authority of central decree, a delicate balance between imperial control and local autonomy. Others argue that the codified rules, from property rights to commercial liability, reflect a deeply philosophical understanding of justice and social order, one that treated disputes not only as economic matters but as moral and societal concerns. Banking houses flourished, offering loans, facilitating international transfers, and underwriting trade ventures that spanned from the fertile Tigris and Euphrates plains to distant Mediterranean ports. These financial innovations, recorded with painstaking precision, allowed for the coordination of vast resources across diverse regions, creating networks of dependency, trust, and accountability. Legal precedents were carefully preserved, with judges consulting past cases to ensure consistency and fairness, a system that influenced not only Persian administrators who would inherit these methods, but also later civilizations seeking models of governance that could manage complex populations and economies. Contracts were often sealed with signatures or symbolic marks, emphasizing accountability, while detailed descriptions of goods, labor, and obligations ensured clarity in disputes. Even rituals and social obligations were codified, weaving together spiritual, civil, and economic life into an interconnected fabric that bound the empire together. The sophistication of these systems is all the more remarkable when considering the scale and diversity of the Neo-Babylonian realm, where multiple ethnicities, languages, and traditions coexisted under one authority. Every tablet, every contract, every legal decision was a thread in the larger tapestry of imperial administration, a testament to a civilization that understood the power of order, record, and regulation. And yet, as we gaze upon these meticulous frameworks, one must wonder how these human-made structures of law and commerce coexisted with the celestial knowledge recorded by the same scribes. How did an empire balance the laws of men with the rhythms of the stars? Next, we ascend from the streets and courts to the heavens themselves, exploring the Neo-Babylonian mastery of astronomy and mathematics, where observation and calculation reached a level of precision that would echo for millennia. From the structured world of law and commerce, we now ascend to the celestial ambitions of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, a civilization whose gaze extended far beyond its walls and canals, reaching into the heavens themselves. Imagine standing on the flat rooftops of Babylon at dusk, the city's bustling streets quieting as the sun dips below the horizon, leaving the sky a deep indigo canvas dotted with stars. It was here that Babylonian astronomers and mathematicians, armed with nothing but keen observation, styluses, and clay tablets, began the painstaking work of charting the heavens. They recorded the movements of planets with a precision that would astonish later civilizations, predicting eclipses and cycles with a reliability that seemed almost supernatural. Their methods were far from mere superstition. They employed advanced mathematical techniques, calculating complex numerical relationships and geometric positions with sophistication that would influence Greek, Islamic, and eventually European scholars. Some researchers suggest that these observations were closely tied to both religious and practical purposes. The stars guided agricultural planning, informed omens and divinations, and underscored the Neo-Babylonian belief in cosmic order and the interconnection of the divine with human affairs. The famous Venus tablet, for instance, meticulously tracks the planet's appearances and disappears across decades, hinting at a society deeply invested in understanding time, cycles, and celestial rhythms. But Babylonian astronomy was not purely theoretical. It had tangible consequences for everyday life. Calendar calculations informed the timing of festivals, civic duties, and even commercial agreements, intertwining the abstract patterns of the sky with the pragmatic demands of an empire. Persian rulers, arriving centuries later, recognized the value of these astronomical insights, preserving records and integrating the knowledge into their own administrative and religious frameworks. And yet, despite these achievements, much remains shrouded in mystery. How did these scholars achieve such accuracy without modern instruments? What motivated their relentless dedication to observing the heavens, night after night, year after year? As we reflect on the silent dedication of these astronomers, etching their knowledge into fragile clay, we are reminded that the Neo-Babylonian Empire was not merely a society of walls, palaces, and markets. It was a civilization that sought to decipher the universe itself. From this lofty exploration of stars and numbers, our journey descends once more to the earth, to the monumental architecture and engineering marvels that rendered the city of Babylon itself a wonder that echoed across time, whispering of human ingenuity and ambition that continues to captivate our imagination. Next, we move from the heavens to the very stones and bricks that made the Neo-Babylonian Empire a tangible marvel, where human hands shaped the physical world with ambition rivaling that of the stars. Imagine walking through the streets of Babylon during its zenith, where the air carries the scent of baked clay, incense from temples, and the faint temps of the Euphrates waters. The city's walls, towering and imposing, were not merely defensive structures. They were declarations of power, adorned with glazed bricks that shimmered in the sunlight, depicting dragons, lions, and other creatures of symbolic might. Each brick, fired with meticulous care, reflects an empire that understood the interplay of function and aesthetic, a civilization capable of marrying engineering with artistry. The famed Ishtar Gate, a monumental entryway, served as both a ceremonial passage and a visual statement of Neo-Babylonian ingenuity, its reliefs of sacred beasts seemingly alive, guarding the city with silent, eternal vigilance. Scholars and archaeologists who unearthed these structures centuries later have marveled at the precision and scale of these projects, recognizing that such feats demanded sophisticated planning, logistical coordination, and mastery of materials. The hydraulic systems that supplied water to gardens, canals, and irrigation networks demonstrate an equally impressive understanding of engineering, enabling agriculture to flourish in a region where the land itself could be unforgiving. Some researchers believe that the Hanging Gardens, one of the most enigmatic wonders of the ancient world, were not merely decorative, but also a testament to the Babylonians' ability to manipulate water, soil, and architecture in harmony, creating spaces that transcended the practical and entered the realm of myth. Urban planning in Babylon reflected a calculated approach to life itself, streets organized into commercial, residential, and ceremonial zones, public spaces designed to facilitate both governance and community cohesion. Persian authorities, centuries later, would adopt and adapt many of these architectural and urban innovations, perpetuating Neo-Babylonian influence long after the empire itself had fallen. Yet even with all we have uncovered, questions linger. Were these constructions purely expressions of power? Or did they carry symbolic meanings intended to communicate cosmic order, divine favor, or social hierarchy? As we trace the lines of city walls and the patterns in glazed reliefs, we sense the whisper of hands long gone, crafting a city that was as much an idea as it was stone. From these monumental achievements, we move finally to the most intimate and lasting legacy of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the enduring influence on culture, religion, and intellectual life that would ripple through civilizations for millennia. Finally, we arrive at the enduring echoes of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the legacy that stretches far beyond walls, canals, and bricks, reaching into the very currents of human thought, law, and culture. Sit back, relax, and imagine the quiet halls of Babylonian scribal schools, the soft scratch of reeds on clay tablets, the careful notations of legal cases, astronomical observations, and financial accounts being meticulously recorded for posterity. These records, preserved through centuries, became the threads connecting the Neo-Babylonian world to subsequent empires and civilizations. Persian rulers recognized their value, maintaining archives and employing Babylonian administrators whose expertise in governance, law, and commerce ensured that the wheels of empire turned smoothly across vast and culturally diverse territories. But the influence did not stop at bureaucracy. Jewish communities, exiled to Babylon, absorbed and adapted the intellectual and religious environment around them, creating innovations in worship, education, and communal organization that would shape Judaism profoundly, with ripples felt centuries later in Christianity and Islam. These exiled scholars studied Mesopotamian myths, legal frameworks, and philosophical ideas, and yet they transformed them through a monotheistic lens, crafting literature, wisdom texts, and legal methods that were uniquely Hebrew, yet deeply informed by the surrounding culture. Neo-Babylonian achievements in astronomy and mathematics likewise left a lasting imprint, providing foundational knowledge that Greek, Islamic, and eventually European scholars would build upon, creating a continuum of scientific inquiry that spanned millennia. Even art and architecture carried forward their imprint. Glazed bricks, reliefs, urban planning principles, and hydraulic engineering inspired subsequent Persian, Hellenistic, and Islamic projects, blending form and function in ways that transcended political borders. Archaeological rediscoveries in the 19th and 20th centuries revealed not just material wealth, but a civilization of astonishing sophistication, one capable of influencing administration, religion, art, science, and daily life long after its political authority faded. And yet, with every tablet unearthed, every wall restored, and every insight gained, questions linger. How did such a brief political entity achieve a cultural and intellectual resonance so profound that it would echo through empires and centuries? What whispers of Neo-Babylonian thought remain hidden in texts yet to be deciphered, in myths waiting to reveal new connections, or in the silent streets of ruins that once pulsed with life? As you drift into thought, consider the fleeting nature of power contrasted with the enduring reach of ideas. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, though politically demonstrates that the true measure of a civilization may not lie in the length of its reign, but in the depth of its influence, a legacy that continues to shape our understanding of law, science, art, and spirituality even today. Now, we lift our gaze from the earthbound streets and courts of Babylon to the vast, silent heavens above, where Neo-Babylonian astronomers peered into the night sky with instruments both simple and precise, charting the movements of planets, predicting eclipses, and calculating calendars with a meticulousness that still astonishes modern scholars. Imagine a dimly lit observatory, the scent of clay tablets and red pens filling the air, as scribes record nightly observations of Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, noting their positions against a backdrop of endless stars. Some researchers believe that these observations were not merely for religious or ritualistic purposes, but formed the backbone of agricultural planning, taxation schedules, and imperial administration, where celestial events could dictate planting seasons, tax collection, or even political decisions. Others suggest that Babylonian astronomers pursued knowledge for its own sake, a drive to understand the cosmos and its hidden patterns, guided by a belief that the heavens reflected divine order, a cosmic mirror of human society. The mathematical sophistication underpinning these astronomical records is staggering. Complex numerical tables, sophisticated methods for predicting planetary conjunctions, and geometric calculations that reveal an understanding of abstract relationships far ahead of their time. These techniques, carefully preserved on clay tablets, traveled across empires, influencing Greek scholars such as Hipparchus and Ptolemy, who would build upon Babylonian foundations to develop Hellenistic astronomy. Later, Islamic scholars translated and expanded upon these texts, integrating Mesopotamian precision into medieval astronomy and mathematics, creating a chain of knowledge that would echo into the Renaissance. But within Babylon, the work was deeply practical. Scribes used these calculations to maintain the calendar, regulate festivals, and align rituals with celestial events, intertwining the spiritual and the administrative in ways that reinforced imperial authority. Some tablets even reveal a curious blending of observation with prognostication, suggesting that divination and science coexisted in a delicate balance, as officials sought guidance from both the stars and established law. The precision of Babylonian mathematics extended beyond astronomy, influencing measurement systems, architectural planning, and commercial accounting, ensuring that every facet of life, from city construction to trade contracts, could be quantified, predicted, and managed. And yet, for all their sophistication, mysteries linger. How did these scholars perceive the universe in a time without telescopes or modern instruments? And what inspired them to pursue patterns that stretched beyond immediate practical needs? Next, we descend from the heavens to the earth once more, exploring the architectural and engineering marvels of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, where brick, water, and human ingenuity combined to shape a civilization that still leaves awe in its wake. As we return our focus from the stars to the tangible, sun-warmed bricks of Babylon, the city itself begins to reveal its secrets, whispering tales of ingenuity, ambition, and a desire to impress both mortals and gods alike. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was not content with merely surviving. It sought to shape the world through construction, to leave an imprint in stone and glaze that would endure far beyond the lifetimes of kings and citizens. Imagine walking along the processional way, its surface smooth from countless footsteps, the scent of baked clay mingling with the faint fragrance of incense from nearby temples. Towering above, the Ishtar Gate glimmers in deep blues and golds, dragons and lions frozen in eternal parade. Each tile a testament to the skill of artisans whose hands transformed mud into myth. Scholars suggest that this was more than decorative artistry. The city itself was a message, a deliberate fusion of aesthetic mastery, religious symbolism, and political authority designed to awe subjects, visitors, and enemies alike. Beyond its ceremonial grandeur, Babylon's urban planning reveals a careful, almost scientific approach to space. Streets aligned for processions, residential quarters organized for accessibility and security, commercial districts designed to facilitate trade while maintaining order, and waterways integrated for transport and irrigation. Hydraulic engineering, inherited and perfected from earlier Mesopotamian innovations, allowed the city to thrive in a region prone to scorching summers and unpredictable floods. Canals, reservoirs, and dikes channeled the life-giving waters of the Euphrates, supporting agriculture and sustaining urban populations far larger than the surrounding environment would naturally permit. Persian administrators would later adopt and expand upon these techniques, recognizing their effectiveness in managing resources and sustaining prosperity across vast and diverse territories. The Neo-Babylonian architectural legacy also extended vertically, from monumental ziggurats that reached toward the sky to multi-story palaces where kings entertained, judged, and governed. Some researchers argue these structures symbolized a hierarchy of power and divine favor, while others suggest they were functional innovations, maximizing space and demonstrating engineering mastery. Each brick, each channel, each ornamental motif reflects layers of knowledge passed down through generations, preserved in physical form long after the empire's political authority faded. Yet for all the precision and planning, Babylon retains an air of mystery. Who truly walked these streets in the quiet hours? And what private thoughts, fears, or dreams were hidden behind its massive walls? From one mystery to the next, we will now explore how the Neo-Babylonian legal and commercial systems complemented this physical grandeur, structuring life in ways that would ripple across empires and centuries. Next, we move from the physical magnificence of Babylon to the invisible frameworks that held the empire together, the intricate web of laws, commerce, and bureaucracy that defined daily life and enabled the Neo-Babylonian Empire to function with remarkable sophistication. Imagine, if you will, a vast hall lined with clay tablets, each etched with precise cuneiform markings, a silent testament to rules, agreements, and obligations that governed everything from trade to family life. The legal system of Neo-Babylon was not simply a set of arbitrary decrees. It was a living, evolving framework shaped over centuries, drawing upon earlier Mesopotamian traditions, yet innovating to meet the needs of an empire in flux. Judges and scribes worked with meticulous care, interpreting precedents, resolving disputes, and ensuring that commercial transactions, property rights, and civic responsibilities were maintained with a level of consistency that allowed cities and farmlands to thrive under centralized oversight. Commercial law, in particular, reveals a civilization intimately attuned to the complexities of trade across vast distances. Banking houses issued credit, facilitated investments, and managed transfers of wealth that crossed rivers, deserts, and political boundaries, creating networks of interdependence that bound merchants and citizens alike to the empire's prosperity. Persian administrators would later adopt these systems, not merely as relics of the past, but as effective instruments for managing even larger and more diverse populations, demonstrating the enduring value of Neo-Babylonian innovation. Yet alongside these practical applications, the legal and commercial structures carried deeper cultural significance. They codified social hierarchies, delineated civic responsibility, and embedded ethical considerations within the mechanisms of governance, creating a society where law, economy, and morality were interwoven into daily life. The cuneiform archives preserved at Babylon offer a window into this complex world, revealing not only the procedures of bureaucracy but also the human stories behind them. Disputes between neighbors, contracts between distant traders, and the meticulous recording of taxes and tribute. Some researchers suggest that this emphasis on documentation and precedent laid the groundwork for subsequent legal traditions, influencing Persian, Hellenistic, and even Islamic jurisprudence centuries later. As we consider these dry, clay-bound records, it is striking to imagine the tactile sensation of scribes pressing reed styluses into soft tablets, the careful attention required to preserve accuracy, and the invisible threads of authority and accountability that stretched across the empire. From these silent markers of order and commerce, we transition to another layer of Neo-Babylonian legacy, the intellectual and scientific achievements that reached from the ground beneath our feet to the stars above, shaping human understanding for millennia to come. Close your eyes and let your mind drift back over 2.5 millennia, to a land of towering ziggurats, sun-baked streets, and the ever-present scent of baked clay and river mud. Picture Babylon, rising like a jewel on the banks of the Euphrates. Its walls thick, its gates adorned with tiles that shimmered in deep blues and golds, catching the sunlight in a way that must have made travelers pause, even those who had journeyed from lands beyond the horizon. This was the heart of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, a civilization whose name echoes through history with equal measures of fascination and enigma. Sit back, relax, and let the stories of kings and scholars, scribes and merchants, unfold in your mind as if the ancient air itself whispers them to you. The Neo-Babylonians ruled for less than a century, yet their influence spread far beyond the walls of their city, threading into the empires that would follow. Some researchers suggest that it was their mastery of bureaucracy, law, and trade that allowed them to achieve what few empires of their size ever could: a sudden, brilliant flowering of culture and intellect that left traces long after their political power faded. Others point to the sheer audacity of their architectural feats, the Ishtar Gate, with its striding lions and dragons, and the processional way, a road so meticulously designed it still inspires wonder today. But these physical marvels are only the surface. Beneath them lay vast networks of cuneiform archives, scrubble schools, and financial records. The accumulated knowledge of centuries, meticulously recorded and preserved. Persian administrators, who would later rule the same lands, recognized the genius of these systems, retaining Babylonian scribes and adapting their expertise, ensuring that Mesopotamian intellectual traditions would endure through the turbulence of conquest and empire. As you begin to sink deeper into this story, consider the quiet hum of daily life within Babylon. The scribes scratching clay tablets with red styluses, the murmured prayers echoing in temples, merchants haggling along canals, the faint clatter of horse hooves against stone. Each sound, each gesture, was part of a civilization in full motion, alive with complexity, yet balanced precariously on the edge of history. And as night falls over this ancient city, the question lingers in the air. How could a society that existed for such a brief moment leave marks so profound that they would ripple across empires, shaping law, science, and culture for centuries to come? From here, we move to the rulers who carved their names into history, whose ambition and vision set the stage for a world that would never forget Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar II, the name that dominates the memory of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, was more than a king. He was an architect of awe and ambition, a ruler whose vision stretched far beyond mere conquest. Imagine him standing atop the city walls, gazing over a city alive with motion, the hum of markets, the rhythmic splash of the Euphrates against its embankments, the distant chants from ziggurats that pierce the sky. Some historians believe that his ambition was fueled by both divine inspiration and political necessity, a desire to cement his city as the unrivaled jewel of Mesopotamia. Under his reign, Babylon transformed into a spectacle of grandeur, with streets carefully planned, canals threading through the city like veins carrying life and commerce, and gardens that seemed to defy the arid landscape surrounding them. The famed hanging gardens, though their exact existence remains debated, are said to have been a living tapestry of greenery, cascading terraces that whispered of human ingenuity and the longing to tame nature itself. Nebuchadnezzar's campaigns extended Babylonian influence far beyond the Euphrates, reaching the Levant, Phoenicia, and beyond, weaving a network of tribute, trade, and cultural exchange that strengthened the empire's foundations. Yet, as grand as his constructions were, his administration equally impressed contemporaries and successors alike. Cuneiform tablets, meticulously recorded and preserved, reveal a bureaucracy of astonishing sophistication. Detailed accounting of agricultural yields, trade transactions, and legal decisions that ensured order across a sprawling, multi-ethnic empire. Persian conquerors, arriving decades later, would recognize the genius embedded in these systems, adopting and adapting them to manage territories that stretched from the Indus to the Aegean. Nebuchadnezzar's legacy, therefore, was not only one of walls, gates, and gardens, but of idea systems, of governance, law, and knowledge that would outlast his empire. The city's religious and cultural life also thrived under his rule, with temples devoted to Marduk and other deities serving as centers of learning, ritual, and communal identity. Scholars of the era observed celestial movements, recorded eclipses, and calculated calendars, their meticulous work bridging the gap between the mortal and the divine, the known and the mysterious. As night deepens over Babylon, one can almost hear the echo of scribes at work, merchants negotiating, priests chanting, all contributing to the rhythm of a city that seemed eternal. And yet, for all its splendor and complexity, questions remain. How much of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon was reality, and how much has been shaped by the centuries of myth and memory that followed? From this awe-inspiring reign, we now move to the intricate legal and commercial systems that bound the empire together, revealing the invisible threads that sustained Babylon's brilliance. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was not only a city of monumental beauty but also a civilization held together by systems of law and commerce that reveal an astonishing level of sophistication. Imagine a bustling marketplace along the banks of the Euphrates, the scent of spices and grain mingling in the warm air. Merchants calling out prices in multiple languages, and scribes hurriedly recording transactions on clay tablets that would outlast generations. Some researchers suggest that Babylonian legal principles, refined over centuries, created frameworks that ensured fairness while maintaining order in a society that encompassed diverse peoples and cultures. The cuneiform tablets preserved at Babylon reveal not just punishments and fines, but complex contractual obligations, partnership agreements, and commercial credit arrangements that allowed trade to flow smoothly across vast distances. Banking houses, operated by skilled merchants and scribes, issued loans, accepted deposits, and facilitated transfers that connected Babylon to cities hundreds of miles away, creating an economic network that rivaled anything in the ancient world. Observing this system, Persian administrators saw the value in these methods and incorporated them into their own imperial bureaucracy, blending Babylonian efficiency with the needs of a larger, multi-regional empire. Beyond commerce, the legal system of Babylon extended into everyday life, regulating marriage, inheritance, and property, while also addressing disputes between neighbors, laborers, and merchants. Casuistic reasoning, where specific cases established. General principles allowed laws to adapt to new circumstances, a flexibility that scholars note influenced Jewish legal thought during the exile and beyond. Some texts hint at disputes over river access, grain measurements, and trade agreements with foreign merchants, each case meticulously documented with signatures, seals, and witnesses, creating an enduring record of social and economic life. It is within these records that we glimpse the pulse of Babylonian society, the careful balance of individual ambition, communal needs, and imperial authority. The empire's ability to sustain this balance contributed to its longevity, despite the turbulent political climate of the region. And yet, the question lingers: how did these commercial and legal innovations survive the fall of the empire? How did scribes and merchants preserve this knowledge across generations, influencing cultures far beyond Mesopotamia? From the meticulous accounting of Babylon's markets and courts, we now turn to the intellectual achievements of Neo-Babylonian scholars, whose observations of the stars, the movements of planets, and the mysteries of mathematics would echo through history, shaping scientific traditions for centuries to come.